Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Renew. I'm Pastor Tony. Thank you for joining us. Let's get right to the point. We're in the middle of a series we've entitled Faith 101. We're looking at the principles for developing a lifestyle of effective faith. 24/7, 365 days a year. In other words, all the time we can live and walk by faith. Now, we've already established the fact that our faith must be focused squarely and centered on God Himself. But this week, we're talking about two specific things that we must believe about God that are going to cause our faith to be focused and strong and effective. First of all, we must believe that God is able, that He has the capability, that He has the power, ability, and resources at His disposal to take care of whatever situation or circumstances that we might find ourselves in. Now, yesterday in Jeremiah 32, verse 17, we read that God created the heavens and the earth with an outstretched arm. Is there anything too hard for Him? Well, the question has to be answered by reasoning the fact that we do not exert all of our abilities and resources and strength by an outstretched arm. Now, in other words, this movement right here does not reflect all the power and strength that you have available to yourself. Now, God created the heavens and the earth by simply just a small portion of His power and strength, just with an outstretched arm. So it goes to reason, if God created everything, including you, with just an outstretched arm, with just a small portion of His power and strength, can He not much more take care of you? Can He not much more take care of whatever situation or circumstance that you might find yourself in? Now, I know a lot of people have what I call a no-fault religion, in that they just believe that everything that happens, God's just going to do it irregardless of whether we cooperate with Him or what we believe. And that is just not true. It's not true about salvation. It's not true about receiving from God or anything. No, even though God's power, ability, and resources are unlimited, there's nothing impossible with Him. You personally can limit God in your own life by unbelief, by misplaced, misdirected faith. We call that doubt and unbelief. You can limit God in your own personal life. You can limit what God can do for you, through you, what you can receive from God, just by not believing, by having unbelief and doubt. Now, there really are two sides for what God is going to do in our life. First of all, there's the God side. He's unlimited. He has the power, ability, and resources. He has the capability of taking care of your situation. But there's a Godward side, but there's also a manward side that we need to be aware of, and that's what we're talking about here. Faith and believing is our part. We have to do our part. Now, we have the easy part. God has the hard part. He has the part of promising, performing, and providing. But we have the other end of that in receiving by faith, believing and receiving. Now, we're going to look at a situation today in Psalm 78. Psalm 78, that I believe is going to be kind of an eye-opener to a lot of folks who really don't believe in what I call that no-fault religion, that God just does it irregardless and outside of our willingness and outside of our believing, and that's just not true. Now, the children of Israel who were delivered from Egypt, God delivered them out with His strong arm, with His strong power of salvation. And they were supposed to go through an 11-day journey through the wilderness and go in and possess the promised land that He had promised to their forefathers in covenant, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, but there was something that happened that caused them not to be able to go in and possess that promised land. And it was on their part, not on God's part. God didn't run out of power. He didn't run out of strength. They did not believe. They did not cooperate in faith. Now, in Psalm 78, verse 19, it says, yes, they spoke against God. They said, can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Verse 20, behold, He struck the rock so that waters gushed out, the streams overflowed. And then they said, can He give bread also? Can He provide meat for His people? See, after all the demonstration of God's power on their behalf, they were still questioning God's ability. They were still making questions when they should have been making faith declarations. They were still saying, can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Can he give bread also? Can he provide meat for his people out here? No, at this point they should have been saying, instead of asking questions, can God, they should have been making declarations of faith that said God can. But they didn't do that. Now I want you to notice the result of this. We'll skip on down to verse number 40. It says, how often they provoked him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. Yes, again and again they tempted God and limited the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power the day when he redeemed them from the enemy. Now notice right there in verse number 41, it says that they limited the Holy One of Israel. Now of course you're not going to limit what God can do per se, but you can, through unbelief like theirs, limit what God can do in your own personal life by his power, ability, and resources. And that's what they did right there. In fact, that generation never got into their promised land, never possessed the promised land, because they limited what God could do in them and through them because of their unbelief. You know, Jesus went to his own hometown one time. This is found in Mark chapter 6. And he had been doing miracles and signs and wonders everywhere, but he went to his own hometown and could not do a whole lot of signs and wonders, very few. And it says in Mark chapter 6, verse 5 and 6, it was because of their unbelief. In other words, they shut down the miracle working power of Jesus, the power of God, because of their unbelief, because they didn't believe it. I tell you, that's something we can overcome though. Amen. Well, that's all the time I've got for today. If you like additional resources and materials, go to TonyCowan.org, and we will see you tomorrow.